As was mentioned in the introduction to this category of cut-through, there are three basic elements that identify this scenario. Firstly, we have a stationary vehicle. Now, the stationary vehicle may be there for one of two reasons. In the animation, we see that there's a line of vehicles ahead of the stationary vehicle, and these vehicles in turn are stationary, and so the driver of this vehicle has allowed a gap for other vehicles to be able to pass through. It could also be that this vehicle is stationary because he's waiting for oncoming traffic to clear before turning to his left. The second basic element is that we have a vehicle in motion cutting across the path of the stationary vehicle. And the third element is that this vehicle then collides with another vehicle in motion that is in a lane adjacent to the lane where the stationary vehicle is. So those are the three characteristic traits. I've divided it into two. So in this video, we're having a look at vehicles crossing the path of the stationary vehicle coming from the opposite side of the road. In the next video, we'll have a look at vehicles crossing the path of the stationary vehicle coming from the same side of the road that the stationary vehicle is on. In each of the successive real-life clips to follow, we see these three basic elements, but I've included them for an additional reason. As we go through them, we'll discuss what that additional reason is, and also I'll point out the page on the website that actually covers that additional reason as well. In this first real-life clip, we've got the exact scenario that we've seen in the animation. So here we've got a vehicle who's now come to a stop, allowing a gap for this vehicle to be able to pass through. So that's the first element, vehicle stationary. There it's come to a stop. Element 2, a vehicle now crossing the path of the stationary vehicle. And then the third element, as you'll see, is a vehicle in motion traveling down the lane just to the right of the stationary vehicle, and the collision takes place. Now, I've included this clip because after the collision, note that the driver who was impacted doesn't stop straight away. So he still continues his travel. And so the point that I want to make here is that one needs to be aware, if you're involved in a collision, just to have your senses about you and that you stop the vehicle immediately, because otherwise it can lead to actually far worse consequences or impact if one doesn't do so. So there is a page on the website that I'll put a link to in the description of this video below that actually has a look at that, the importance of stopping after an accident. In the next clip, we've got the second scenario as to why a vehicle would be stationary. In that first one, it's because of a line of vehicles ahead of the stationary vehicle. But in this case, it's a vehicle waiting to turn left, just waiting for the traffic to clear. So that's the first element, come to a stop. Here we've got a vehicle cutting across the path of the stationary vehicle, and the camera obviously is that third element, the vehicle in motion, and we have that impact. In this real-life clip, the same three elements, stationary vehicle, vehicle cutting across the path, and a vehicle in motion that then impacts with this vehicle cutting across or through the line of traffic. Now, I've included this clip for another reason. We'll just advance the video slightly. Now notice that the door is opened and the driver is on his way falling out of the vehicle. So there he is laying on the road. The vehicle continues. Fortunately, that comes to a rest in a parking spot. But the point of this video is to stress the importance of seatbelts. Now, once again, I'll link to a page on the website that handles seatbelts. and have a look at that page when you get an opportunity. But just showing how important seat belts are. And once I've added the video to that web page dealing with seat belts, you'll see some of the serious incidents that take place. And I've included these just to stress the importance of wearing a seatbelt, because a seatbelt's not only for a head-on collision to prevent you from going through the windscreen or the windshield, but also as a result of a side impact, where, as you saw in this case, the door was flung open, and if you don't have a seatbelt on, the chances are very likely that we're going to be flung out of the vehicle onto the side of the road. The next real-life clip is to also demonstrate an additional point. Stationary vehicle, element 1, vehicle cutting across its path, element 2, and a vehicle in motion that then collides with this vehicle cutting through the traffic. Now, here too, I want to stress the importance of stopping the vehicle straight after an impact. You'll see that this driver doesn't do so, and in fact accelerates. So one needs to have one's wits about you. Where a vehicle is impacted, the driver, totally unexpecting this, may be bewildered, mind can't grasp what's happening, and so doesn't have their wits about them and fails to stop the vehicle in time. So aside from us being a driver in this situation, we've also got to be aware if we may be a pedestrian or one of the surrounding vehicles, that drivers after an impact may not be able to compose themselves properly, and so pose a further danger, as you'll see as we run this real-life clip. So there accelerates, foot still on the accelerator, impacting into the building, and there you can see the vehicle still somewhat trying to move forward. In the next real-life clip, we'll see the elements again. Stationary vehicle, the camera, second element, vehicle cutting across a path. But something different happens here. The vehicle behind him, being impatient, wants to quickly cut across, and so lands up with an impact with the vehicle moving in the lane just adjacent to the camera. So we've got to be sort of aware of people who are impatient and hasty. Now, he could have just waited for the oncoming traffic to pass, wait for the vehicle that was ahead of him to go first before quickly trying to shoot across. And so I've also got a separate page, in fact, a few pages that deal with hastiness of a driver. And so go along and have a look at that as well. In this next one, we see that we've got the three elements, but the second element, so the first element is the camera that's stationary here. The second element of a vehicle cutting across the path of the stationary vehicle actually comes from a surprising source. So let's have a look at that. So one wouldn't expect at a traffic light for the second element, the vehicle cutting across the path of the stationary vehicle, to actually happen right at the junction of a traffic light. And so the point of this clip is just to emphasize the golden rule of expect the unexpected. And so I'll put a link also to that second golden rule of expecting the unexpected. And this is how we can enhance our driving skills on the road, to be able to read a situation, never to think that things are what they are, always to be in expectation of something out of the ordinary happening. And when we can develop our skills to be perceptive and maybe alert to anything going wrong, it gives us that fraction of a second advantage in order to be able to try and take corrective action. So that's a point of this particular clip. Third element of the impact. In this clip, I've included it for a different reason aside from the main point of the video, which is the cut through. got the stationary vehicle, second element of the vehicle cutting across the path. But now notice the driver of this van. He should have exercised courtesy and consideration for this driver wanting to cut through and move to the side of the road. But instead, he just forges ahead and now collides with the vehicle wanting to cut through. So it would have been no skin off his nose in order just to wait that few seconds in order to allow the vehicle to pass. There's not much that he could do because the vehicles ahead of him are stationary. There is a line of vehicles, so it's not like he's going to gain much advantage or ground by not allowing the vehicle to pass. And so the point of this clip is for us to be courteous and considerate of others on the road. He could have seen quite clearly that the driver of this vehicle is wanting to cut across and just allowed him that gap. A few seconds would have meant nothing to him, but the driver would have appreciated his courteousness. And so I'll put a link in the description section of the video below that will take you to a page that deals with consideration. And we want to try and do that when we on the road. Show consideration to others, and it's contagious and infectious. Other people will appreciate it. Even if they don't, you still feel good about yourself when you're driving along. This next clip is once again demonstrating cut-through traffic, but I've included it for the reason of this driver. Now we've got a van, so his visibility of any vehicles traveling down the side of the van here would be a danger, obviously, to him. And we'll see as we run the clip that there is that impact. But when we find ourselves in a situation like this where our visibility is very limited, we've got to exercise with a lot of caution. We can't just assume that it's clear to go ahead and just forge forward, because then we expose ourselves and others to the risk of that impact and collision. So in a situation like this where you can't really see if there are any vehicles coming down the side here, then the best thing to do is to edge our vehicle very slowly across the road here, because by doing that, any vehicles coming down the side here will see then our vehicle slowly sticking out beyond the van here, slowly sticking out, and they'll be more alert to a vehicle wanting to cross the road slowly. So that's the best way to do it. Edge out into the road very slowly and slowly progress so that it gives time for any vehicles to be able to respond until we get to the point where perhaps we can see properly. But the driver didn't do that. He just forged ahead, suffered the consequences there. For a vehicle that's actually traveling down the side road, and if that was us, we also got to be cautious, because you'll notice that his speed differential, in other words, his speed relative to the speed of these other vehicles that were waiting, was very high. And so if we're traveling down a side lane, we see that the vehicle stationary just to the one side. Always anticipate that there is going to be a vehicle that's going to cut across. So we want to be a lot more cautious, travel slower, and then look for any vehicles that might start encroaching into our lane. Please like, subscribe, and get notified.